It is the latest symbol of America's decline. On social media, passenger cabins on jetliners bound for the United States are mostly empty. Hello, everybody. David Shuster here. Normally, at this time of year, aircraft headed to the United States are packed, but tourism is down dramatically, and international travelers staying away from the United States keep citing one reason: Donald Trump.
I think something really does have to change. I really hope so for the world, actually, not just for me.
When it comes for vacation, I think there's other places I would rather go.
It's dangerous and nobody is safe there anymore to come to America as a tourist.
25-year-old Lucas Sila from Germany was stopped from entering the U.S. after a trip to Mexico with his American girlfriend. He was shackled and held for 16 days before being allowed to return home last month.
I get a lot of questions from people who want to visit America, and I try to help them and tell them my experience.
That's what Germans have heard about America. Australians have also gotten an earful from several cases. One Australian with a working visa was detained and deported on returning to the U.S. from his sister's memorial.
He says U.S. officials called him an epithet and told him Trump is back in town. We're doing things the way we always should have been doing them.
The effect of all of this on people coming to the United States is significant. As The Guardian reports, the number of Europeans traveling to the United States has cratered under Trump. See all of those charts?
Some Dutchmen say, why are you going? You're going to Trump?
New trouble from abroad. There's a sharp decline in international visitors to the U.S., down at least 14% from a year ago.
It's even worse with Canadians.
The overall political climate, I'm a little more content this year just to spend my money in Canada.
Canada accounts for a quarter of all tourism to the United States. Several reports say that Canadian tourism to the U.S. this year is down by 70%. The cumulative effect is huge. According to data from the World Travel and Tourism Council, America is on track to lose $12.5 billion in travel revenue this year, making it the only country out of 184 analyzed that's projected to see tourism dollars decline in 2025. International visitor spending is expected to fall to less than $169 billion by year's end, a 7% drop from 2024 and a staggering 22% decline from tourism pre-pandemic peak in 2019. The WTTC said it could take until 2030 for U.S. tourism to bounce back to pre-COVID numbers. Recently, President Trump was asked about the tourism decline.
On tourism, there's been a steep drop-off in international travel to the United States. It was down 12% last month, down even more from Western Europe. Why do you think that there are fewer people suddenly who want to travel to the United States?
Well, there could be a little, there's a little nationalism there, I guess, perhaps. It's not a big deal.
But it is a big deal to several U.S. states, especially those along the Canadian border. In Kennebunk, Maine, this inn relies on Canadian visitors and has seen bookings vanish.
We're usually almost full with Canadians, and this year we had 2 families.
Summer is not looking any better.
We just feel sad that we're not going to see our friends this year.
The governor of Maine has ordered the placement of these welcome signs in several border towns and is publicly pleading with Canadians to visit.
Just to reinforce the idea that Maine welcomes Canadian visitors, Canadian businesses, Canadian citizens.
In the meantime, Canada is getting some very high-profile public solidarity in its tensions with Donald Trump.
King Charles delivered a rare speech in the Canadian Parliament today, reaffirming that Britain stands with Canada as it navigates a challenging relationship with President Trump.
The King's speech said Canada is facing challenges that are unprecedented in our lifetimes.
Democracy, pluralism, the rule of law, self-determination, and freedom are values which Canadians hold dear, and ones which the government is determined to protect. As the anthem reminds us, the true north is indeed strong and free.
And its citizens are putting a noticeable financial squeeze on the United States. Adrian Wright, a Canadian living in Germany with family in the United States, is refusing to travel to America.
What would need to change for you to consider going back to the United States?
I would have to say bye-bye President Trump. I would like to see that he doesn't make it through the next 4 years.
He doesn't make it through the next 4 years. That may sound harsh, but that is the way so many international travelers feel now about Donald Trump. And Trump keeps adding insult to injury. Trump recently spoke about a military missile defense system that could cover the United States and Canada, and said it would cost Canada over $60 billion, but would be free if Canada becomes the 51st U.S. state. Canadians called the choice rude, belittling, and vulgar. In other words, Donald Trump keeps being Donald Trump. And instead of soothing tensions with Canada and the rest of the world, Donald Trump is inflaming them.
We have tariffs, they've been set, and it's going to make our country very rich.
The whole world is listening.
Kami Farhadi is the CEO of Starline Tours in Los Angeles. He says the Trump administration's policies have been bad for business.
In the first quarter of this year, we're down about 29 to 30%.
And what are they saying when they cancel?
They don't feel safe. They don't feel welcome.
By the way, Trump White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt is flailing as Donald Trump's debt bomb spooks U.S. bond markets.
This bill saves $1.6 trillion for the American taxpayer. It saves more than any bill that has ever passed Capitol Hill has. In fact, by double. The next bill saved $800 billion. This bill saves $1.6 trillion.
While it's true the bill cuts Medicaid, student loan funding, climate change projects, and other spending, the bill costs the U.S. government even more through tax cuts for the wealthy and extra defense spending. Altogether, the bill will borrow $3.1 trillion we don't have, and the borrowing could go even higher.
So even without this tax bill, the deficit was essentially going to keep going up over the next 10 years, maybe come down a little bit at the very end, but essentially up. Then you add in the tax bill that we just talked about, including the fact that they've played the same gimmick they played in 2017, setting up some of these things to expire. And that would make the deficit impact higher, but not as high as if you made all this stuff permanent. The record of Congress, stuff almost always gets made permanent. And so somewhere along in here, they will make this permanent and will end up on this line. And this line is something like $25 trillion of additional debt.
This is a very good bill for the American people, the American taxpayer.
Up 20% of Americans, you're going to get roughly a 3.7% increase in your after-tax income, really all from these tax cuts. But if you go all the way to the bottom and everything in between essentially leads you to the bottom, if you're in the bottom 20%, you actually lose $800. Why do you lose $800? You get a very small tax cut, and you get a very large cut in Medicaid and these other benefits that we were just talking about that affects the 20% disproportionately.
Check out that video at the link below. It generated a lot of comments on YouTube. One of the most popular is from Frederick, who wrote, saves $1.6 trillion and raises debt by $25 trillion. Effing brilliant, right? I look forward to reading your comments about Donald Trump tanking the U.S. tourism industry and costing American businesses tens of billions of dollars. I'm David Shuster. Thanks for joining us.